Inkstead, Minnesota Radio Network coverage of the American Farm Bureau National Convention. And of course, the theme, Stronger Together. Hi, everyone. Jim Bartles here on our series of broadcasts that we're coming your way throughout our Inkstead, Minnesota Radio Network. And with us on their broadcast this time is Amber Glazer, Director of Public Policy for Minnesota Farm Bureau. And Amber, we welcome you to our broadcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So first of all, Director of Public Policy. All right, let's not assume anything. What does that mean? What do you do?
I have the honor of representing our nearly 30,000 Farm Bureau members from across the state on anything related to public policy. I think the bulk of that work definitely this time of year is at the state capitol here in Minnesota, interacting with our legislators on the interests of our Farm Bureau members. I also do our federal policy work and work with our members of Congress to implement our policies at the federal level. My team also does our grassroots activities. So we work with our Farm Bureau members on how to interact with their legislators, how to tell their own stories and those kind of things. So a lot of different varieties, but this time of year, it's definitely interacting with our legislators and making sure Farm Bureau members have a voice at the state capitol and out in DC.
So while these are a little different times with COVID, I assume you probably normally, on a normal year, you might be at the Capitol a little bit too, doing some work and lobbying, right?
Yes, this session has looked very different already. We're only in week 2, but everything's virtual at the state capitol this year. And so we're watching hearings remotely, but we're definitely, I think, interacting more with legislators than we have in the past, which I think is really interesting. Both at the state and federal level, I think there's definitely an appetite to make sure that elected officials are still hearing what's happening at that boots on the ground level, because they're not seeing people in the coffee shops when they're home or anything. So that I think our FaceTime with elected officials has actually increased, which is a good thing for Farm Bureau members, I think.
So I'm assuming with the National Convention, virtual, of course, there have been sessions about policy. What have been some of the key topics that are coming up with that right now?
AFBF went virtual this year, which has offered a unique opportunity to allow Farm Bureau members that normally wouldn't have been in San Diego with us to watch some of those sessions. And there were a lot of really hard-hitting policy sessions this year. We addressed cattle markets, which has been an ongoing issue, especially as we look at some of the impacts on COVID. A hot topic is always broadband. And so there was how we stay connected in a virtual world. And that really dug into some of the details on broadband policy and some of those things as well. There's also an opportunity for AFBF President Zippy Duvall to have a conversation with Beth Ford, the CEO of Land O'Lakes here in Minnesota. And that was a really good conversation about just kind of the ag industry in general and how we work together in some of those issues facing everyone, not just Farm Bureau. So a lot of really good conversations. And the best part about the virtual setting is that all the programming is on demand. So it's all recorded so people can register and watch that even after convention ends.
Amber, before we take a break, so we're talking about the national scene and so forth. Collin Peterson used to be the ranking chair, Ag Committee. That's changing. Tell us where things are at with that, because especially in Minnesota, Peterson's from Minnesota. People knew him well. I think the general feeling is he did a great job representing agriculture. What about this transition, and how's Farm Bureau feeling about this?
117th Congress looks really different from a Minnesota perspective in agriculture. Chair Peterson served Minnesotans well, agriculture well, and this Congress, we have new leadership in the Ag Committee. The new chairman is from Georgia. The ranking member is from Pennsylvania. On the Senate side, we now have Chair Stabenow from Michigan, who's the only returning committee chair or ranking member on the Ag committees. And so we've got a very different voice just from a Midwest perspective that leadership has shifted to Southern states. And so that I think will change the conversation. I think what's promising to me is that the new leadership has expressed an interest in continuing Chair Peterson's way of working across that bipartisan, ag isn't about politics, it's about getting things done. And so I hope that continues in the Ag Committee, because that's what really made us successful, is getting the work done for farmers and ranchers across the country.
All right, well, we'll be watching that. So that's certainly of interest. And Amber Glazer continues to be with us, Director of Public Policy, Minnesota Farm Bureau. Amber, how long have you held that position with Minnesota Farm Bureau?
I've been on the public policy team since 2012. I took over as director just a few years ago. So getting up there in my years at Farm Bureau, but always on the public policy team. I started out handling just federal issues and have expanded that role since.
And you're a Minnesota girl. Tell us about your background.
I am. I grew up in a corn and soybean farm in Grand Meadow, Minnesota, so Mower County down in Southeast. I come from a long family history of Farm Bureau members, so it's really an honor to be able to be a part of this organization that's meant so much to my family throughout the years.
And a wrestling cheerleader. We were just talking about that. Of course, I enjoy the wrestling sport and all those things that go with it. So great to have that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Minnesota public policy. And for those that missed it, I know at the state convention, virtual convention for Minnesota, one of the things that was done was they established the 8 areas of priority for Minnesota Farm Bureau. Maybe review a few of those that would really be key for us to talk about.
So the Minnesota Farm Bureau Board of Directors set our priority issues for 2021, primarily here at the state level, but obviously some cross over to our federal issues as well. One of the bigger pieces is broadband. 2020 showed us that access to reliable broadband is key for everybody in the state. This has been an ongoing issue, but it will continue to be a priority issue for Farm Bureau as we look to expand that investment for reliable broadband across the state. I think one of the hot topics, both at the state and federal level, is climate change and the environment. Farm Bureau has also always paid attention to environmental issues, but really taking a proactive approach to addressing climate change moving forward. And that'll be done through reducing greenhouse gases through the increased use of renewable fuels and other voluntary programs that we can accomplish both at the state and federal level to make sure that farmers that are already doing a lot of these practices have the resources and technical support to continue to make a big difference on the environment. I think every issue that we're going to address in 2021 is going to somehow touch back on the impacts of COVID. And one of those big pieces is food supply, which is a priority issue for us. We need to make sure we're supporting those that are growing the food, transporting the food, processing, packaging, all the way up to those grocery store shelves to make sure that everyone in Minnesota has access to markets and a safe and secure food supply. So that will definitely be a big topic and kind of one that touches on every issue as we move forward. I think another big topic this year as we look at state budget will be research and investment. From an ag budget perspective, we want to make sure that we're continuing to invest into research programs. Here in Minnesota, one of those biggest programs is AGREET, the Agriculture Research Education Extension and Technology Transfer Program. It's a lot of words for a simple acronym, but it's really just research at the University of Minnesota that's played such a big role into the success of Minnesota agriculture. And finally, another big area that Farm Bureau is always active on is tax policy. That's a fun one. And over the last few years, we've seen a lot of success on making advances in a tax code that works for farmers and ranchers. The Ag to School tax credit continues to grow, which has been a huge support for agriculture and our school systems and rural communities across the state. So we want to make sure we're protecting that tax credit to make sure that farmers and ranchers continue to address property tax issues through that. And we're also pleased to see the state adopt Section 179 conformity during one of the last special sessions. So I want to make sure that continues as well. So we'll keep an eye on tax policy, but really pleased with the advances we've made over the last few years.
Yeah, just looking at, again, part of the slogan line, if you want to call it that, but for Minnesota Farm Bureau, farmers, families, and food. All of that ties into the things that you were just talking about, and it's great. And you guys are advocates for the farmers, for agribusiness in general, and you got a lot of work on your hands, a lot of things to stay on top of, and representing our 30,000 members in Minnesota.
Exactly. There's a lot of issues that impact the whole state, from that farm perspective, the rural community perspective, and you're right, that food perspective of how we make sure that, especially in the tough times we're in right now, that every Minnesotan has access to that food supply that Minnesota farmers are so proud to grow.
Amber, if it's okay, we probably have some listeners and perhaps viewers now, as well as we're also putting this on a number of our Facebook and sites and web pages. If someone wants to get a hold of you and give you their input or have a question, how should they get a hold of you? What would be a contact information that we could share on this broadcast?
I always love to hear from farmers and ranchers across the state on the issues that are impacting their families, their farms, their businesses, and their communities. So always happy to talk to Farm Bureau members or those interested in being a Farm Bureau member too. Our contact information is available on our website, fbmn.org. Always happy to take phone calls as well. Please reach out. My phone number is 507-272-6677. And so happy to hear those stories of the issues that are impacting our farmers so that I can help share those stories with our elected officials and help those farmers share those stories too directly to their elected officials.
Once again, the website, fbmn.org. Check on it there. And Amber, your phone number one more time.
507-272-6677.
Amber, we could talk a lot longer, certainly about Farm Bureau, about wrestling, whatever it would be, but it's great to have you with us. And thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time during the American Farm Bureau National Convention. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jim.
That's going to wrap up this broadcast on the Inkstead, Minnesota Radio Network. We hope you enjoyed. More broadcasts still to come. Jim Bartles reporting for the Inkstead, Minnesota Radio Network.